Every era of gaming has a sort of dominant genre. For the 90s, it was the mascot platformer. For the 2000s, it was the licensed tie-in game. For the 2010s, it was the shooter. And now, it's the open-world adventure game. There's a lot of overlap, and that's a bit of a generalization, but those certainly seem to be the trends at the time. One of those games I think about quite a lot is a tie-in game for a movie and a shooter, set to be one of the most revolutionary games of all time, only to leave a broken mess in its wake. Trespasser is something special. To understand Trespasser, we need to take a step back to the late 90s. To this point, shooter games were in the vein of Doom, Wolfenstein, Duke Nukem, or Quake. We were still a year out from Half-Life, and GoldenEye was still brand new. There were already a litany of Jurassic Park games on a variety of platforms, and the sequel to the hit film was already well underway. It made all the sense in the world for the sequel to the then biggest movie in the world to have a similar media blitz. Originally slated to be a sequel to the movie, Trespasser was one of these games. It was set to be one of the most ambitious, complex games ever released. Headed by Seamus Blackley, the future father of the Xbox, it was planned to feature complex, real-time physics, realistic environments, and an emotion system for the dinosaurs that would affect whether or not they wanted to attack you. Alas, it was not meant to be. The game's development was plagued with problems. Delays and setbacks plagued the whole cycle. When the game finally released, much of what was promised was scrapped. The emotion system was dropped entirely, dinosaurs could not follow you indoors, and the game struggled to run on even the best hardware at the time. By all accounts, Trespasser was considered a failure, but the story doesn't end there. Trespasser left quite a fascinating legacy behind. Plenty of games would look to Trespasser as inspiration and attempt the same things it did. Early versions of Far Cry would feature dinosaurs. The physics would go on to inspire Half-Life 2, and it even spawned Trescom, a Trespasser-focused fan site that provides patches and new content for the game even today. More than 25 years later, what could be in this game that captivated so many while many others were turned away? Trespasser is a game that tries to put immersion first. Perhaps the first thing you'll notice that there is no HUD or inventory system or anything like that. You have to manually move your arm to aim and move physics objects, needing to look down at this heart tattoo on your chest to check your health, a frequent subject of internet memes and in-jokes. You also won't have to worry about counting your ammo, as your player character will do that for you every chance she gets.
6, 5, 4, 1.
You play as Anne, voiced by Minnie Driver of GoldenEye and Good Will Hunting fame. Trespasser does have a story, but it's about as much of a side thought as its contemporaries. You'll hear her thoughts and monologues at various triggers throughout the level.
Where is the goddamn phone? I want out of here. I want diet soda. I want copy machines and juice boxes and cartoons.
And we'll also occasionally hear snippets of an in-universe memoir by John Hammond.
A forest this wild, this unknown, has not been seen by any human since the great hunters of the early Pliocene.
With narration from the late Richard Attenborough, something that absolutely delights my inner Jurassic Park nerd. Aside from a few very 90s pre-rendered cutscenes, that's about the bulk of how the story is delivered. It feels very understated, but appropriately so. As stated by Seamus Blackley, immersion was the whole point. This is your adventure. Your thoughts are Anne's thoughts, and I think that's something of a lost art in today's landscape of highly cinematic games. Not that story focus is bad. Some of my favorite games are incredibly story-driven, just that it isn't really done quite like this anymore. Trespasser is absolutely massive for its time. It's not quite Skyrim, mind you, but for its time, the scale is absolutely breathtaking. This does, however, come at the cost of many other things, primarily in progression. We were still a ways off from Half-Life's seamless transitions that felt like one big, cohesive world. Each section is its own level, with separate loading screens between them. What this means in a practical sense is that you can't backtrack to any previous levels, and if you had any particularly good weapons exiting, you won't have them entering. This can feel especially jarring when holding a weapon only to have it disappear moments later. Normally this isn't so bad, but it can add an extra layer of fear when dinosaurs spawn so early on in a level. That's not a bad thing though. There are a few Easter eggs to be found, but there's also quite a lot of empty space. That's not a bad thing though. In a place like Isla Sorna, not every square inch is going to be super important. The empty, derelict buildings in the town serve a great deal to make it feel like a lived-in area. Finding landmarks like Nedry's office, or Henry Wu's home, or Hammond's mansion tickles something deep within me. There aren't a ton of levels, but what they lack in numbers, they make up for in scope. Even using the run button, some of these can take a really long time to complete. This is both the game's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. It makes the adventure feel positively larger than life, but can also make certain parts feel like a real drag, and it gets especially bad when you aren't save scumming. The way the physics and hitboxes of Trespasser work is super bizarre and can lead to a lot of super unfair deaths and failing puzzles that don't feel like the player's fault. It can lead to every level feeling like an absolute marathon, one that leaves me absolutely exhausted by the end. This isn't helped at all by the abysmal walking and running speed, which feel like not even a leisurely jog at the pace Anne moves. I sure hope you like the sound Anne makes when she jumps, because bunny hopping is the quickest, most effective, and efficient transportation method in this game. What makes this all worse, however, is that you can only carry 2 items at a time, including weapons. So if you have particularly good weapons and need to take a keycard, say, to the other side of a town, you're gonna have to drop one, take that keycard, open the door, then hike back to pick up the gun again, and then hike back to where you were. It's a chore. It feels needlessly tedious and makes levels feel a lot longer than they need to be. You could circumvent this and just carry on with the one gun, but remember, there's no auto-aim in the game, which means that it's very easy to miss shots, and even if you don't, you run out of ammo a lot faster than you might think, especially when raptors come at you 2 or 3 at a time, and at multiple points, especially when more than a few puzzles require you to shoot something to get a physics object moving. Does Anne just not have pockets or something? Now, programming limitations prevented them from being able to include a second arm, but to be honest, I don't know how much that would help. Phasmophobia, for example, only lets you carry 3 items at a time. This is mitigated, however, by keys and lighters being their own special dedicated slot, meaning you can have a full inventory without needing to sacrifice an item to be able to do something as simple as open a door. This isn't entirely a fair comparison, I realize. We are talking about 2 different games with about 19 years between them, but the limitation works a lot better in the case of Phasmophobia than it does Trespasser, in large part because of the large scale of the world. Oh, and also, using an AK-47 or shotgun with just one arm, held out at arm's length with absolutely no blowback, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but, you know, video games. On top of all of this, the AI for the dinosaurs is rock bottom stupid. They will frequently trip over themselves, walk off into the abyss, and generally just stumble around like they're drunk. They can still pose a significant danger, especially in large numbers, but it shouldn't be too hard to just avoid them with minimal effort. It also does end up taking just a bit of the awe and majesty away from what I can only imagine were supposed to be breathtaking set pieces. The primary threat in the game will be raptors, with the odd T-Rex or Albertosaurus sprinkled in just to keep you on your toes. In fact, the most common dinosaur you'll see in the game will be raptors. They are the first and last species you see on the island. The final boss is also a larger raptor, due to time constraints and leaving the development team not nearly enough time to come up with anything else. It goes down all the same like any others. Just unload all your ammo into it and bang boom pop and stack some final crates and make your final escape from the island. Like other games, it's hard for me to outwardly comment on the music since I'm not a very musically inclined person, but this is a case where okay, I don't hate it, but also, it doesn't sound bad, per se. It just doesn't have near the majesty of the John Williams score. It's very, we have Jurassic Park music at home sort of sounding music, and frankly, I don't understand why they didn't just use music from the films. Was it a licensing issue? Could they just not afford it? Hey, Future Saturn here. I was talking about this very question in a Discord server, and it turns out that's pretty much exactly what happened. Licensing is complicated, folks. Was John Williams not willing to sign off on his work being used? I don't know. And it leads to a soundtrack that feels very generic and forgettable. Nothing painful to listen to, but also nothing I'd put on in my spare time or when working on something else. And really, that's all there is to Trespasser. Sure, there are some interesting levels to dive into, and the PC Gamer magazine demo, but there's little to be said about them since they are so short and contained, especially compared to the rest of the game, if they can even be found at all. It's easy to look back on Trespasser and see it as a failure. A game that didn't live up to the hype and let down a lot of people, but I would argue the opposite. Trespasser is by no means a failure. It's a game with problems, to be sure, perhaps more than many, but it's also a game with a long-lasting legacy that spawned into some of the biggest and most successful games on the PC platform, that spawned all kinds of other games in its wake, even indirectly being partially responsible for the Steam platform. A game that shaped PC gaming as we know it, spawned an entire lineage of other games, a dedicated fan community, and is just fascinating to talk about and think about. By that measure, I would call Trespasser a big success. There's little more that I can ask for than a game just being fun and making a lasting impact on me. And Trespasser did both. If anything, I would love to see Trespasser remade or get a remaster. Not all of the ideas stick, mind you, but the skeleton of the game is that of an all-time classic. For every frustrating physics fail, or every time the hitboxes don't work, or all the drunk raptors stumbling into ancient ruins and killing themselves, there's this ever-present spark of a game that's really something special. Something really, truly amazing. A game that, perhaps given an extra 6 or 7 months or so of extra development time, could have achieved it a place in the Hall of All-Time Greats. It's not like nobody has ever tried to remake it. There are a ton of fan projects floating around out there at various stages of completion, none of which have ever been fully completed though. Which is a shame. Like, I get it. It's a full entire game, and most indie game developments are developed by solo developers or very small teams. Not to mention, fan projects like this are not something you can legally profit from. Asking for something like this is huge, I realize, and I don't begrudge anyone who didn't or couldn't see the whole thing through. For reference, Sonic P06, something similar to what I'd like to see done for Trespasser, has been in development for close to a decade now, and as of writing this, has still not seen its final release. And as far as Trespasser goes, this is a legacy we're left with, for better or for worse. Technology has come a long way since Trespasser entered development. Compared to the tools and documentation we have now, making games back then was like baiting two rocks together. There have been attempts at remaking the game, but all have fallen by the wayside, which is an absolute shame. It's one game I think desperately deserves another chance, because it was dealt such an awful hand. Trespasser deserved more than what it got. Hey everyone, Saturn here. This was a video I was trying to make for years now, but never quite cracked the code on how to put it together until super recently. I've gone through a lot of different versions to land on this one, and I'm pretty proud of the results, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like and a comment telling me your thoughts. If you want to see more videos like this video, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you want to support the show even further, I have a Ko-fi page where you can make donations as little as $1. If you can't or just don't want to, that's fine, I get it. It's tough out there right now for everyone, and it's only getting tougher. I appreciate you just watching the video. Regardless of all that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.